welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going above and beyond the call of box office returns to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Stacey Moore.
I'm Nicole Finari.
And this week, at long last, we're going to overanalyze the new reboot of Ghostbusters.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we've got a lot to say on this.
A lot.
Generally, I think everyone's familiar. The plot is basically that, following a ghost invasion of Manhattan, spoiler alerts, people, ghosts invade Manhattan in this. Paranormal enthusiasts Aaron Gilbert and Abby Yates, and nuclear engineer Jillian Holtzman, and subway worker Patty Tolan band together to stop the otherworldly threat. It is directed by Paul, is it Feig?
I believe it's Feig.
Paul Feig, who has worked with Melissa McCarthy before on other comedies like Bridesmaids, Spy, The Heat. He co-wrote it with Katie Dippold, who also wrote on The Heat and Parks and Recreation. And it stars, the aforementioned Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, and SNL's Kate McKinnon and Leslie Jones. Okay, I wish we had 2 hours to talk about this, which technically you and I do, but
yes.
We won't. We'll edit it down for everyone at home. Should we just start on like a movie level first?
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
On a movie level, I had no strong feelings about this movie. I enjoyed it. It made me laugh. I liked, Spy and Bridesmaids, so I liked this. Was it the best comedy I've ever seen? No, there were weak spots. Did I enjoy myself? Yes. How did you like it?
So, I found the intro a bit long. Okay. So, it took too long for the action to get going. So that part, bothered me. But once things kicked in and once they were, the Ghostbusters, I got a lot more involved.
Started busting ghosts.
Yeah. I thought it was funny. Mm-hmm. I thought that it was a wee bit scary.
Really?
The quote-unquote, I won't tell you what it is, but at one point, Leslie Jones's Patty walks into a room as they're hunting for ghosts and goes, well, there's a room full of nightmares, and just walks right back out. And it was like,
so hard.
Yes. Like, this is going to be scary. But I'm so easily scared it's not even funny. Like, everything scares me.
That's funny.
So, I really liked the action scenes, although I've heard some heavy criticism of them. Mm-hmm. I thought they were fun and they were just enough.
Flashy.
Yeah, they had good practical. They had good practical effects as well as the CGI, which didn't look real but wasn't supposed to.
Right.
So it didn't affect me as much as I've complained about in other podcasts. But I think so. A couple of highlights for me about the movie itself. Number one, no yucky love stuff.
Yes.
No.
Absolutely.
Zero, which I have to say Paul Feig has been remarkably good at keeping the yucky love stuff out of it and keeping,
if it's there, it's sort of just peripheral,
I mean, it was like there in Bridesmaids, and that's what Bridesmaids was about. It was a rom-com, but
or like the Jude Law and Spy.
Right, but they don't,
but it's not the main point.
It's not, and it's really not that much yucky love stuff. It's like, it's unrequited.
Sure.
So,
it's more just funny.
It's played for laughs. Right. And no one ends up in a relationship except for the women. Like, the end of Spy and the end of this movie is all about how the women's friendship has become such a central part of their lives and how important it is to them. And it's like, for
that's the key bond.
The key thing about women in a movie is not men. In any way, shape, or form. Men are never at the center
of Paul Feig's movies.
No, and it's so refreshing to see a movie, a comedy / action movie that just doesn't have some stupid relationship just to have one, which is what I call the yucky love stuff. So that part I completely adored. The role reversal, you have the, Chris Hemsworth's character Kevin, who's literally the damsel in distress in this entire movie. Like, he totally is incompetent.
He's the princess in Mario Brothers.
He is. He has to be saved and rescued by the Ghostbusters. Like,
he's delightfully idiotic.
Yeah.
And self-centered. I loved how he just had no regard for anyone else around him.
And to Chris Hemsworth's credit, like, he held his own.
He was funny.
He's
a funny actor.
In a cadre of very, very funny women.
Right. He was set up against a tableau of serious, like, comedy chops. And
right.
He in a way that, oh gosh, I don't want to be mean, but I feel like Jon Hamm never quite pulls his weight when he's in this kind of ensemble.
Interesting.
And I feel like, and I was worried Chris Hemsworth wouldn't, but I feel like he did. I feel like he really brought, I laughed in every gag he did, basically.
Yep, he held his own. So, the movie was funny, and I have to say, I think Kate McKinnon is definitely getting all of the good press.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
For this movie.
She stole the show.
To me, she didn't.
Oh, okay.
I actually liked Leslie Jones better, and we can talk about that.
Yeah.
But first things first, it is a credit to both Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy as the sort of stars, as the leading ladies, as the established talent, where they really just held back and let the two other women,
the character actors,
take the show. Like they could have like completely subsumed every scene, but it really was an ensemble. Yeah, and they talk about generous actors and actors who will just step all over everybody else's lines. Like that's very common in the industry, and it was just refreshing to see an honestly very subdued Melissa McCarthy compared to what she's done before. She really was, for the most part, the straight man in this, which was good. We don't need more of the same wacky Melissa McCarthy. And Kristen Wiig as well. Like, she, they really let the other two women shine, which I thought was great.
And much to our benefit. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Watching, I think most of the charm of the movie is the four of them interacting.
Yes. Yeah. So I read something about, the sort of criticisms of the movie and whether or not this is going to spawn, a whole thing.
Like a franchise.
Yeah, and we can get into that later, but the review I read said, I want more, just because the four women together are fantastic. So, like, you put them together again. I can't remember. I think it was on Vox.
Sure. Hollywood Reporter and Paste were both kind of like, they were underwhelmed by it, which I found disappointing.
I think it was very hard to live up to expectations, like, because there was so much controversy and so much press leading up to it that it just wasn't. Spy had the element of, like, I went and saw it in the theaters to support Paul Feig and to support Melissa McCarthy, and I didn't think it was going to be particularly good, and then I had the delightful surprise of finding it hilarious. Whereas this one, like, it came in with very weighted expectations, and so it's hard to live up to that.
And it wasn't. I feel like the originals, I guess plural, were action comedies.
They were first and foremost comedies.
You think? Do you think so?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the action in that was sort of minimal in the way it was here. They were big,
Okay.
I mean, most of the movie, they're not really doing too much. They're just sort of running around and watching Sigourney Weaver levitate or whatnot.
That's true.
Like, they're not, they're basically comedies. Yeah. And this was too.
But I don't you think this one was heavier on comedy than the 80s ones?
I don't know. It's hard for me to say. I think, it was a little bit of a long lead up. There was just a lot of dead space.
Right.
In the beginning of the movie, where no comedy or anything happens, and I'm like, okay.
You didn't think the beginning was funny?
No, I was like,
I loved the whole like anti-Irish defense system, and like, and this is the room where P.T. Barnum had the idea to enslave elephants, like just right off the bat.
Yeah, there were a couple of good one-liners in there. I guess the whole the early plot of Kristen Wiig trying to get tenure and whatnot, like, that just didn't land for me, and I never really got invested in her character.
Career arc.
Yeah.
And I felt like her character didn't go anywhere either.
Right.
They made such a big deal about... So as she just mentioned, the what's her name? Is it Abby? No, Abby's Melissa McCarthy. Erin Gilbert is trying to get tenure at Columbia. And she's trying to live down this book that she and Abby self-published like several years ago about ghosts, and that legacy is kind of haunting her as she tries to get tenure at this Ivy League school. And it becomes like this theme of Erin caring too much what other people think, in particular the patriarchy, right, which is implied.
Yeah, she's like flagrantly sexually harassed in that by the dean or the chair of her department, and he comments on how she's dressed, and rather than sort of call him out for like, that's inappropriate, she's
right.
like, I'll do better, like,
sure, like, how would you like me to dress?
Yeah.
And that comes up a couple times in the first and second acts, but I don't feel like that was ever really resolved. Like, I don't feel like we saw her kind of rise above the people pleasing.
Right.
Did
we? No, she
Yeah.
doesn't. She ends up not having much of a character arc. Neither does Abby. It's really Holtzman and Patty who end up sort of stealing the movie out from underneath the two leads. And so my feeling on the Patty issue is a couple things. So, of course, there was a lot of controversy, which we'll wade into a little bit about the movie, but
I think we can get into it. Let's do it.
All right. So one of the early trailers made Patty just look like this sort of sassy black woman stereotype, and then a bunch of people complained that as the only minority of the four Ghostbusters, she was also the only non-scientist. Her character is a subway worker.
Right.
To which Leslie Jones, to her credit, fired back immediately with a, what's wrong with being a subway worker?
Thank
like,
you.
why can't a regular
you.
person save the world and be a Ghostbuster? And absolutely said, not everybody has to have a fancy job.
Yeah.
Anybody can be a hero. And I was so impressed. It was such a great response. And then in the movie, does she have sort of sassy black character elements? Yes. But what I absolutely loved about it was, like, they kind of confront that head on, and they make her, like, this real person who is not always sassy, but is generally, like, this upbeat, cheerful,
History nerd.
Yeah, and she's so just funny and warm, and
She brings something to the table. Like, she has an encyclopedic knowledge of, like, local history, in Manhattan that they all depend on at certain points in the movie. She's a full character.
she's a real person, and she sort of plays with the idea of, like, okay, you can maybe see where the stereotype of the sassy black woman comes from, but
why are we not allowed to portray them?
Right.
Like, why does every black character... back in the 70s, you had Bill Cosby. This was 70s Bill Cosby, although I don't know if that's any better than today's Bill Cosby or not. But he had a role in this ongoing, I think it was like a police procedural kind of mystery television series. And he was the only black character on television who was actually a lead. And he was a genius, like literally had like a 180 IQ, had like 3 PhDs, blah, blah, blah. 10 years later, he's a doctor, he's a wealthy doctor on The Cosby Show. That was the only way you could portray people of color and have the masses accept them, was if you made them extraordinary. If you made them like unattainably Sorry?
Yeah, the talented 10th, that's the word.
Okay, absolutely. And, everyone deserves to be, included in the stories that we see portrayed. Like, if there's an MTA staff, worker, then, that's, she deserves to be in the story.
Exactly, yeah. And she just owned it. She was to me, she stole the show. Kate McKinnon was kind of weird and quirky and fun, but, in terms of the person I was most wanted to see on screen at any moment, for me, it was Patty.
Thoroughly entertaining.
So funny and sweet, and I loved her. Also, this is funny. So the other controversy was no one would make her a dress for the premiere, which I didn't know this about her. I haven't been watching Saturday Night Live. She is 6 feet tall.
She's a substantial person.
And she was, at the head and, shoulders over everybody but Kristen Wiig, who she was only a head taller than. So, she just towers over the other Ghostbusters, which is really funny. But in an action movie, you want somebody, credibly, able to... you want the Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? You want somebody who looks like they can take a beating. So.
Right. But I think you were going to lead up to she couldn't get a designer to do her dress for the premiere, right? Which is disheartening. She went apparently to every designer in town, and no one would do it. And she eventually had to go to Melissa McCarthy's.
Kristen Soriano from the Project Runway jumped in at the last minute. Was I will make you something. But yeah, she should have to ask Melissa McCarthy. I thought they all looked completely adorable in their jumpsuits. Completely adorable. I didn't care what their size or shape was. I thought they all just looked cute, and was way to go for picking a whole cast full of non-traditional people.
Different
and
types.
Seriously uglying down what I guess is the most attractive one. I'm not that super familiar with Kate McKinnon.
She is naturally pretty, isn't she? It seems like she has that very classic facial structure.
Right. So they just make her look weird and put her in weird glasses.
They were not sexualized in the least.
Defiantly not.
Defiantly
made everybody look less attractive.
Right. Poor Leslie Jones, though, apparently got it coming and going. And I didn't realize that till I looked it up today. Are you familiar with the backlash? Apparently, her Twitter account got hacked. She's been harassed.
It didn't get hacked, but it was just a stream of harassment and racial and misogynistic stuff just poured down her Twitter until
her specifically.
Yeah, just on her. And although again, the movie, it's been very controversial that they
which is a mystery
reboot,
an utter mystery to me. Why was this so challenging?
To me, what I think is funny is if you told me. I mean, to me, I feel like everybody's trying to go around and ruin my childhood, right? They keep remaking movies that I'm the first one was good enough. Why are you remaking this?
Sure. When Little Mermaid comes out, I'm just jumping off a bridge.
When they make, Singing in the Rain with no one who can sing or dance, that'll be the end for me. I know. So. God. Yes, but, so to me, I'm the only good reason to do a Ghostbusters reboot would be to do it with 4 feet. The only good reason to do it would be to have a really refreshing
take on it.
Yeah. So then the backlash comes out and you're but that's nuts.
I don't understand.
It doesn't ruin the first one. You still have the first one.
Right, they didn't...
What would ruin the first one is if they did the first one over again with less funny people, know? Right?
Sure. And it was done in the same spirit. You had, the first one was, they cast comedians, SNL-style comedian, in some cases, actual SNL actors. The tone is the same. The source material is the same. The reason that the Ghostbusters reboot took so long to come to fruition was because Bill Murray was so cagey about it. He was very, very picky about it being redone. This is the one that he blessed. To me, if the high priest of Ghostbusters comes down and says, from on high, and says, "This is it, I anoint this," then sorry, it's good enough for me. Even if he hadn't, it would be good enough for me. But for, the hardcore fans that took such like ire with this. I don't. Where is it coming from? Other than just
it's misogyny, right?
Okay,
like it has to be.
Sure.
Because again, plenty of things have been rebooted without this hue and cry as to like this is the end of the world. I mean, they absolutely destroyed Superman, and I don't remember seeing this level of backlash against it. And
right,
like,
where the video game is a year and a half before it comes out has an average 1-star rating.
yeah.
You know, the movie itself, 6 weeks before it came out, had a 1-star rating. Or no, that's incorrect. Of the people who rated the movie at 6 weeks before the premiere, 5-1 were men. And of the men who reviewed it, like 90% gave it a 1-star rating. And it's like, I'm sorry, who has the energy to be that angry at nothing? Somebody with serious emotional problems that needs to explore them with a therapist.
Yeah. That's the person who brings a gun to Virginia Tech and shoots people because they can't get laid. Right? Like, that's the same.
Right.
That's the same level of man hating, right? Like, woman hating. Sorry. Yeah. Like, not to accuse anybody who is against the movie as, you know,
for being a
potential
maniac. But you never know, honestly. It comes from the same place.
It does come from the same place, and I'll stand behind that opinion. I'll go back to the very controversial hue and cry Christopher Hitchens, who I generally like, big, splashy, women aren't funny article that came out a few years ago where it suddenly, rebooted this very old, you know, controversy or discussion about the fact that men are so much funnier than women, and you're like, it's so untrue. It's so ridiculously untrue that women aren't funny, and it is so positively, absolutely true that they are not economically rewarded for being funny in any way, shape, or form as much as men are. There are so many funny women who have been overlooked. And I thought it was particularly funny in this whole controversy. There was like some buzz that Channing Tatum and Chris Pratt were going to make Ghostbusters.
Oh.
And for those of you who don't know this, Chris Pratt is actually married to Anna Faris.
Okay. Yeah, your favorite.
My favorite. And I was like, you must be kidding me.
Right.
If anyone can understand how funny women don't get their due, it should be Anna Faris' husband. Because Anna Faris, frankly, is twice as funny as Chris Pratt. And far more attractive. Like,
she's been, not anymore. Chris Pratt's a
show. But he's like, up and down with
he comes and goes. Yeah. No, but she's been in the industry for 20 years now.
Forever.
And is still just kind of chugging along in a sitcom.
Exactly. Like, she has never gotten the amount of money or vehicles thrown at her that less funny men have had thrown at them. And so, to me, I'm like, you need to step frickin' down, Chris Pratt. Like, you of all people. And they did, and that worked out great, so that's fine. But it was just very sort of disheartening to see, how little women get their due for being funny when they are funny.
For 30% of the population, white men are 100% of the late night talk show hosts.
Right.
Every time one of them steps down, I think, this is the one. This is when we're going to get a chick in there, or a person of color or somebody. And I think all we have so far is Noah.
Trevor Noah.
Thank you, Trevor Noah. And that's cable. That's not even prime time, Big Three, whatever, late night talk show. Like, why is there just like yet another after another just kind of pasty white guy just steps up there?
I think, and so I'm not an expert on this one either. I do think that female stand-ups really, really have a hard time. I think the ones that are in sketch comedy and have broken out from SNL are having an easier time of getting ahead.
Why do you think that is? Because that would describe Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig.
Right. Well, I mean, let's face it. Tina Fey turned it around for everybody. Her being head writer of
absolutely.
SNL, like, shifted that whole conversation. And that was the first thing when Christopher Hitchens wrote that article. Everybody was like, but Tina Fey.
Tina Fey.
And Tina Fey had to respond. I was just like... Because I think the stand-up world is actually easily more insular. You know what I mean? Because it's like who's picking the bookings and who's... Like, it's actually in some ways, I think... But again, I'm not an expert on this. Like, easier to shut women out of that world than to make it a boys' club. Like, who you pick as your headliners...
And
or not who you pick as your headliner, who you pick as your openers. If you are the headliner, like it's easy to keep it a much more insular thing. And I think now people want some women somewhere, even if it's just a love interest, and again, never get their due. Some women somewhere to be funny. So there are parts, there are ways to get in, and then to take over. And then you have somebody like Paul Feig who's just absolutely committed to himself to the Melissa McCarthy star. I can't think of a better person whose bandwagon to get on. And she is funny. She is now in her 40s. She is plus size. Like, she is she is white though. I mean, but she is bucking like every trend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is really nice to see her succeed. So
I belong to this movie meetup group. And I remember we were having a discussion about Bridesmaids, and there was a guy, in our group who was like, I just didn't find that movie funny. And another woman who was like, okay, maybe in your experience it wasn't that funny. Like, if you're a single woman in your 30s, it's like about the funniest movie anybody's ever made. Like,
right.
And I'm like, and that's true. And there's also room for that. I've never found anything the Farrelly brothers have done funny. I don't like gross out humor. I find it disgusting.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, that is a very male, quote unquote, style of comedy. I completely respect that exists in its form, and that, maybe it's not that women aren't funny, but that men and women often find different things funny.
Correct.
And that just because you don't find it funny doesn't mean it's not funny.
Like, you find things funny based on your frame of reference and your library of experiences.
Right.
Right. So when the material you're pulling from is different, you're going to find different things funny. Like, white people or mainstream culture is going to find things funny that are different from, say, someone in like a community of color or a particular ethnic community, because they have a different frame of reference to pull from. And so it's important to have all the hashtag own voices, to have all of those voices represented and available, as opposed to just one segment of the population kind of making only their tastes available for the rest of us to consume. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And so before we move on to the economics, I will say the movie does tackle this very issue, I think, in a delightfully appropriate
yes!
way.
So good. So good.
Yeah. Through YouTube. Comments on a YouTube video
Brilliant.
in the movie.
It was just
in
brilliant.
the movie, they're reading the comments and
on films, actual film footage of ghost sightings that they have posted. They get all these trolls and they are going through the comments, and it was just so delightfully meta.
Yeah, it was meta, and it was absolutely to call out, their critics. And it was sort of artfully dismissed as, well, this is stupid. Moving on.
What do we care about what they think?
Yeah. And I thought that was, to me, was a great way to acknowledge the controversy and just move off of it very quickly.
And get a laugh from it.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Exactly.
The movie was very efficient for laughs, I thought. Except for the cameos. The cameos weren't so funny.
Bill Murray's
was funny.
See, I did not like Bill Murray.
Oh, you didn't like seeing him thrown out the window? I laughed really hard.
Yeah, I did like him seeing him. But,
I laughed at that.
Dick. Yeah, no, but they were alright.
It was almost like they were just there to be there.
Yeah.
They were there to pay homage, to be like, look, we have placed our sacrifice down at the altar of the original, and now we will move on with the rest of the movie.
I think I like Dan Aykroyd's the best. The cab driver was really funny. Like, he plays a cab driver and
who refuses to go to Queens.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Which is a very New York kind of joke.
The aspect I really appreciated about how they delivered the message of, Ain't No Bitch Is Gonna Chase No Ghosts and kind of defying that was that they didn't refer to it. Other than the troll, they referred to the trolling, but they never had like a reporter like come up to them and go, "How are women gonna, catch ghosts?" Like they didn't, and I wouldn't have appreciated that. It really was just the 4 main characters were women, and it wasn't referred to.
Yeah, ever again.
Like their gender was not referred to. At all.
Yeah, I agree.
They were just 4 characters doing their thing. And to me, that's the most feminist thing you can do. Is rather than do, I think last week I was complaining about Tarzan and all the very overt references to Jane's power girliness.
Right.
Which I don't appreciate. And in this one, it was just 4 people.
Yeah.
Going on about their lives, tackling challenges, trying to get what they wanted.
Absolutely.
And succeeding or not succeeding. And that's all any of us want, is to just see ourselves being represented as actual people.
Right. And not having, again, our plot lines center around men or love interests. Mm-hmm. And understanding, again, that female friendships can be supportive and great. I mean, Sex and the City, it portrayed female friendships, but it was all about the dudes in their lives, right? Mm-hmm. So it
dudes
was...
and shoes.
Yeah, and it's just... Or it's, catty, cattiness and women hitting, frenemy stuff and how women are horrible to each other. And so it's nice to see a movie where it's just not about that at all. It's about women just supporting each other and going out and catching ghosts. Yeah. And catching ghosts is fun. I really enjoyed it.
And doing science.
And doing science. Oh, the science was so totally ridiculous.
It was. When they would start going off on their sort of CSI monologues about, the transponsor is deregulating the vortex. So it was just okay.
Yeah, it was
fine.
As the geek community calls it, technobabble of the most insincere kind.
Sure, it was insincere. It felt like they were insert technobabble here. And then move on with the scene.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah. So then the other thing we have to tackle, given the extreme lead up to this movie, and the fact that, it doesn't pay to invest in women in comedy, we get to the box office, which I see as a good thing, but many people see as a bad thing, which is that it had about $40 million opening week. Did not beat out Life of Pets, which frankly is a kids' animated movie from the people who did Minions. And I realize it was the second week, but still. Mm-hmm. It beat out Central Intelligence.
Thank you.
And so everyone is
already saying thumbs down.
Yeah.
Never gonna make another movie like this again. A week in, they had $300 million gross. In 1 week. That's double what the movie cost. That's a profit. That's a profit in 1 week. It's 100% profit in 1 week.
Yeah, it did better than Spy. So it did better than his last film. And it did better than most comedy movie openings. So you can, if you see it as this didn't meet out any Marvel movie ever, right? It didn't have a Star Wars opening. It's it wasn't going to. It's not really if they're investing in this because they want to create a whole cinematic universe, this isn't the franchise to do it, and that's an unrealistic expectation. But for just a comedy movie, it did fantastic. That's a great opening movie.
Absolutely.
It beat everything else. And I think, like his other movies, it will continue. It will have legs.
People will keep going to see it.
Yeah, it will continue to grow.
Unlike Independence Day, which, they didn't have any, pre-screenings because they didn't want anyone to know.
Right.
They're we have Friday night and that is it, people.
If you look at Paul Feig's track record on this front, it's very good. His movies tend to keep making money over time. They don't make all of their money in that first opening week. So I think it did well. I have high hopes that it will keep making money and that they will keep investing.
It's promising. It's promising for the franchise, for the the anchors in the movie. I got absolutely incensed when I read, I think it was Variety. I read an article on just sort of the weekend's box office returns or whatever. And in the first paragraph it was, oh, Ghostbusters only brings in $46 million the first weekend. How sad for them. Doesn't look good. And the bottom and it went on through the other films that had opened that weekend. At the bottom paragraph was Woody Allen's film, Cafe Society, brought in $300,000 on 3 screens. That's the highest screen average in the nation. And I'm like, sorry, let me just get this straight. So Woody Allen brings in $300,000, right? Probably all the actors worked for free. He probably didn't make a dime. That probably covered like the sets and the wardrobe. But that's portrayed as a success. On the other hand, 46 million come in, and you're saying, "Oh, boo-hoo! I guess they'll never work again."
Yeah, I mean,
I was beside myself.
Yeah, so the thing is, again, thankfully it's not the critics who get to decide who gives money to what films. It's the executives. This movie did remarkably well. Like
they'll be counting the dollars.
Yeah,
they're not going to make the wrong choice.
This is making money. This is, again, Paul Feig has made more money on every film he's made so far. So, like, it's great. Oh, FYI, non-spoilers, stay all the way to the end, through all of the credits. You should know this by now from Paul Feig movies, but in case you didn't, hang in there. There's a extra teaser at the end. Yeah. Shout out to Omar, who didn't look scary or gangstery at all. Yeah. So, fans of The Wire, Omar, yes. And then fans of Andy Garcia.
Oh, no, yes. Andy Garcia.
Great.
Best line of the movie.
Great.
As far as I'm concerned.
Which was?
Don't ever compare me to the mayor from Jaws.
Oh, yeah.
Gold.
He doesn't do comedy very often.
No.
Nailed it. I thought he was hilarious.
I laughed really hard. So.
Yes, I've been eagerly awaiting this moment.
How much impact? Yes. How much impact will this movie have on our culture using a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being it changes nothing, and 10 being the world we once knew is gone forever? What do you think?
So, I was already going to give this a high impact score because
going into it, right?
Yeah. Well, just again, women in comedy, like, this is a step along the way, and it's an important step, and it's a big step. It's not the first step. I'd give that to Bridesmaids. Really shifted everything. Yeah. But then this week, our recording week, the huge backlash against Leslie Jones caused Twitter to permanently ban.
Oh, that's right.
I'm going to butcher his name. Happily. I literally was like, I have no interest in learning the correct...
Milo
Yiannopoulos.
Yeah, I don't care.
I don't care who writes for Breitbart and who just makes a career out of sending legions of angry white dudes to harass women for various reasons. Permanently banned from Twitter after Leslie Jones' treatment. So... for that reason alone, like, that's an impact. This is the first person Twitter has permanently banned.
Yeah, I've never heard of that happening before.
They have temporarily banned people, but they haven't permanently banned anyone. So,
from the platform.
Talking to a friend of mine who, thankfully, is a fan of the podcast, was like, wow, that should, like, nail your impact score. I was like, oh, it should. Like, it literally has had an impact we can already point to.
That's a great point.
So, I'm going to give it a 7. I think this was a really important moment. I am. How about you?
I agree. Yeah, I think, you've brought up a couple of sort of seminal moments in kind of for women in comedy, which would be, Tina Fey's rise to fame and success, followed by Bridesmaids. I would throw in, after that, Amy Schumer. Like her, 2015 for Amy Schumer.
Yeah.
And,
absolutely. If we had give an impact score on Trainwreck, it'd be high.
Right, and then I'd say the next one is Ghostbusters. Oh, and also because, and we brought this up before, this is essentially a kids' movie. Like, this is geared towards adults as well, but it's also geared towards kids. So kids are going to go see this, and just like they did with Frozen, they're going to see women being just regular people just being the heroes in the story, the protagonists. And that's going to normalize, which is so pathetic to say, but like, it's going to normalize women being characters in stories without any other reason.
Not just women, though. Mm-hmm. Not particularly attractive women, which isn't to say that individually any of those women aren't gorgeous as much as whatever good looks any of them have.
But they're not fembots.
Are completely downplayed. Like, they're, you give Kate McKinnon the glasses and the weird hairstyle. Like, they're working hard to make any element of attractiveness in these women unattractive. Like, and to me, it's not just that women are funny, it's that also that women don't have to buy their way into a movie by being pretty. And that's absolutely huge. It's huge that he decided to make Melissa McCarthy a movie star. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've never seen. We've seen it from men. How many?
Sure. Kevin James.
How many overweight dudes?
Jack Black. Yeah, line them up. Like, they'll take whoever. Yeah, absolutely. So, not sort of just there for the male gaze. You've got, a woman of color, an LGBT woman.
The three of them, excluding Kate McKinnon, are all in their 40s.
There you go.
They're not even young.
There you go.
Like,
absolutely.
I mean, they have everything working against them. Like, and it's just...
And they're holding their own. They're holding their own as characters, as, comedic forces. And I'm hoping, the kids will see that, and it will be that'll just be the way things are. They're like, oh, people are people. And we don't just exclude an entire segment of the population because that's, they're just not the ones currently in power. They're not what the executives look like, essentially. And so yeah, I would like to think, I'll even go, no, I think 7's good. I think 7's good, actually. So yeah, I'll go with that. Sorry, I meant to disagree with you more.
No, there's no disagreeing. This movie is great. You should see it. Okay, it's funny.
Yeah.
You should see it in the theater so that it makes box office and that they know there's an audience for this.
You vote with your dollars.
Yeah, people. I mean, like, we haven't oversold. It's not the best movie in the world.
Like, right. You're not going to
so don't inflate your expectations.
From what, yeah, exactly. It's just fun. It's just a fun movie for the summer.
Yeah. And of all the crap if it's between this and Tarzan.
yeah, okay, there. We took the bullet for you on that one. We jumped on that grenade.
Although I did see Secret Life of Pets, and that was funny, too.
Was it good?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Is that your recommendation?
No.
What is your recommendation?
All right, I have 2 this week. Okay. So it's been very obvious, and it's come up a few times, but if you haven't seen Spy, run, don't walk.
Absolutely.
And once again, you know Melissa McCarthy is going to be funny. You know that she's a proven commodity. Freaking Jason Statham. I guess people, because I hated Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. He was so hilarious.
So funny.
Stole the movie, was so unexpectedly,
shock,
wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's a good article about, dumb men in the Paul Feig universe. That, Chris Hemsworth and Jason Statham. He's actually made use of, the dumb guy counterfoil pretty effectively, and that's true, and it's wonderful to see men get it and be funny in it, as there have been
funny, yeah.
Julie Haggerty made a whole career about being, and many women have made careers out of being the dumb one. Yeah. Marilyn Monroe. So to great comedic effect. I'm not complaining. It's great to see guys have that opportunity as well. And then for the women in comedy and how difficult it is. If you haven't read Bossy Pants, Tina Fey's book, she has, some really good description of how difficult that world can be for women and how important it is for women to support each other and to support men who are on their side. And it's a fun read. It's Tina Fey. And so, those are my 2 recommendations.
That's a great choice.
Yeah. How about you?
I'm going to take a turn from there. But it is related. So it's not a comedy, although it has funny elements. But it also has, in common with Ghostbusters, is that it features spectral beings from the afterlife.
Oh, wonderful. I thought about, what ghost movie would I recommend?
Okay, sure.
So I'm glad you went this route. Go for it.
Absolutely. Specifically in Manhattan. is I just recently went back and watched for the first time the 2003 HBO miniseries Angels in America.
Oh.
Yeah?
Okay.
Can I get an amen?
I was at this brunch with a lot of celebrities. Like, a lot of celebrities.
Stop it.
There were all kinds of...
Where were you? Who was there?
Rosario Dawson was there. Eva Longoria was there. Various, like, media celebrities were there. I was so starstruck, I couldn't even talk because Jeffrey Wright was there. And you have to really know movies to even know who Jeffrey Wright is, because he's one of those actors who looks so different from part to part.
Oh, Jeffrey Wright, yes,
he plays the nurse.
Yes, absolutely. Belize.
You don't even recognize him.
Right.
But I know who he is, because I saw him in enough things that finally was like, oh, I get it.
I know him from Hunger Games.
He's from Hunger Games, he was Basquiat, he was in Syriana. He's been in a ton of stuff, but he looks so different, like you... Anyway, I was like, oh my god,
totally
it's Jeffrey Wright! Like, he's so amazing! Like, I was so excited to meet Jeffrey Wright.
Wow, you
so
met
great.
him.
Yeah, great.
That's
I think he was
awesome.
like, what? I can't even believe this girl's freaking out. I'm like, it's just like,
but you're
I'm
amazing.
such a fan of your work.
He has, there were, especially in Angels in America, I feel like he has some of the best lines. And he delivers them with just this grace and this flair that, like, I was brought to tears at certain points. Not even because it was sad what he was saying. It was just the writing by Tony Kushner is just so beautiful, and then the way Jeffrey Wright would deliver these lines, I would just I felt like I was being punched in the sternum. It was so good. I mean, there are some definite, like, you know, WTF moments in those 6 hours where there were points where I went, what's happening? I don't really understand. But overall, it was just a beautiful, beautiful piece of work that very different from Ghostbusters. Probably, you know, on the other spectrum of a sort of seriousness level. Mm-hmm. You know, AIDS in the 80s, that's kind of heavy, but very enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I watched it. So if you have a chance. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Movies That Matter. If you did, please take a second to leave a review on iTunes or any of the other platforms we're on. Google Play, Stitcher.
Yep. You can just grab our RSS feed. We are on the internet now, www.moviesthatmatterpodcast.com.
That's right.
There's a contact us form. Feel free to make recommendations or shout out to anything that you want us to say on the podcast. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Yeah, if there's something you guys think we should discuss on the podcast, we're always open to suggestions. Do please recommend it to your friends if you're enjoying the podcast. Please, you know, don't keep it a secret. You can follow me on Twitter at SnowWhitePitchBlack. I believe
I'm at Funarini.
Excellent.
And those, again, our Twitter handles are on our website as well.
Anyway, well, remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
We'll see you next time.